top news this week. Next, we discuss freedom. This is Our Time. I'm Mikhail Baranov. Hello? Last night, the Russian Federation launched 11 ballistic missiles at Ukraine. Some of them were intercepted by air defense. This was reported by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In addition, the Russians used about 150 attack drones for the strike. 60 of them were Shaheds. Air defense forces managed to neutralize 116 drones. Drone and missile strikes were recorded at 15 locations. A woman and a 10-year-old child were killed as a result of the Russian army's attack on Kharkiv in the region. Another 6 people were injured. This was reported by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The occupying army attacked the region with strike drones. One of the strikes was a direct hit on a private residential house. The Dnipro region also came under Russian fire. Due to the drone attack on the settlement of Shakhtarska, 9 people were injured, including a 13-year-old girl. According to the local administration, all of them were wounded and hospitalized with burns. One woman is in serious condition. According to rescuers, as a result of the Russian strike, an apartment building and a private house were damaged. The fires that broke out have already been extinguished. 1 person was killed and 4 more were injured as a result of a Russian attack on the Chernihiv region. According to local authorities, last night, the Russian army used drones to strike Novograd-Seversky. Fires broke out in the private sector, and some houses were completely destroyed. 1 person was rescued from a burning building. 1 person was killed and 2 others were injured as a result of a Russian attack on Odessa. One of the attack drones hit the roof of a residential building, while another fell in the yard. At the site of the attack, windows were blown out and commercial properties sustained minor damage. These include a store and a gym, a private clinic, and a shopping center.
At first, we could hear the air defense working. First, we heard air defenses, then a Shahed drone, followed by a loud blast. Then a fire started. We saw it from our window. We went downstairs and saw a fire. Soon, the heating in the building went off.
I was worried about the windows. I got up thinking, I was worried about the windows. I thought, the main thing is that the windows are okay. I went up and everything was fine.
The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces counted 283 combat clashes over the past day. In the southern Slobodansky direction, the Russian army stormed Ukrainian positions 7 times. In the Kupian sector, 13, and the Lyman sector, 22. On the Konstantinivka section of the front, the defense forces repelled 30 attempts at an offensive. And in the Pokrovsk area, the Russians were most active, attacking 72 times. The Huli-Ipel bridgehead also remains difficult, where Ukrainian soldiers repelled 26 enemy assaults. The defense forces eliminated 1,250 Russian occupiers over the past day. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to their data, since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has lost 1,247,500 military personnel. Over the past day, Ukrainian defenders also destroyed 3 tanks, the same number of armored combat vehicles, 12 artillery systems, more than 400 units of automotive equipment, and over 100 enemy fuel trucks. Ukrainian soldiers once again attacked a number of Russian army military targets. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on the night of January 9th, defense forces struck a command post of a Russian airborne forces unit near the city of Sudzha in the Kursk region. And in the occupied part of the Kherson region, in Novo-Alexeyevka, Ukrainian defenders destroyed an enemy ammunition depot.
In addition, according to preliminary results, specifically regarding the UAV stockpile near the city of Rostov-on-Don in the Rostov region, the destruction of 3 containers with FPV drones and components has been confirmed. According to preliminary data, about 6,000 FPV drones were destroyed. Several other containers with drones were also damaged. The enemy's losses and the extent of the inflicted damage are being clarified from the statement of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
The units of the occupying Russian forces in the Kherson direction are experiencing serious fuel shortages. Restrictions are being imposed on the use of equipment. Some units are being switched to an economical load. This was reported by the partisan movement Atesh, and according to their information, the most acute problems are in the Airborne Assault Regiment and in the motorized rifle units on the left bank of the Kherson region. This is the result of a successful strike by Ukrainian defense forces on a fuel train near Hwardiiske in temporarily occupied Crimea. Risking their own lives, volunteers continue to evacuate not only people but also animals from the frontline areas of the Zaporizhia region. Evacuating four-legged friends is no easy task, since they require a special approach in extreme situations. Volunteers managed to rescue 20 kittens and 10 dogs from Orikhiv. Along with them, the owner of the animals also left the combat zone. Watch our detailed video report to see how the rescue operation actually unfolded on the ground. Settlement.
Orikhiv, in the Zaporizhia region, is located just 6 kilometers from the front line. Nevertheless, people still live here. Abandoned animals often come to them in search of warmth and food. That's why Olga set up a small shelter here. After learning about this, volunteers came to Orikhiv to help the four-legged residents and their caretakers evacuate to a safe place.
Recently, we had 14 dogs here. Today, they're still here. Tomorrow, they might end up in a situation where there are fewer of them. Then they come back and we feed them again. We have a water bowl outside. So that's how they stay with us. The cats come too, and eat. They come once, they come twice. If there's something to eat, they stick around. We had 35 cats.
Olga agreed to evacuate because she just couldn't endure the constant Russian shelling anymore. She had no strength left. But before, she couldn't bring herself to leave. She was afraid to abandon several dozen pets. Olga and her pets are taken to the neighboring village of Kamyshivaka. Here, the woman and her friends are handed over to volunteers from the Netherlands. They agreed to cover all the moving expenses and take the woman and her animals into their shelter for displaced people in Dnipro.
I call these kinds of requests a request with a star. I call these kinds of requests a request with a star. At first glance, it might seem safe, but you never know what could happen. At the entrance to Orikhiv, there are lots of loitering drones on duty, but I hope we get lucky.
While the volunteers are busy evacuating the crew from the Freedom TV channel, I get a chance to talk to those who still remain in Kamyshivaka. The locals say that in recent weeks, people have been more willing to leave because of the increased shelling. In one of the city's districts, Russian forces hit with 14 air bombs at once. They fell on residential buildings.
All the civilian and private sectors and apartment blocks. No, there are no military targets here. They're terrorizing people, probably trying to wipe us out.
Elena and her family also suffered as a result of Russian aggression. They were left without a home. For a while, they even decided to leave Kamyshivaka.
Then we came back, hoping things would get better. But the situation got a bit worse for us. And now almost all my relatives have left. I can't leave yet because I have 7 cats.
Kamyshivaka is located about 15 kilometers from the front line. But here, just like in Orikhiv, there are also animals left behind by those who fled to safer places. The pets that were left are being fed by local residents. Denis has been volunteering since 2022. During this time, he's managed to visit all the frontline regions of Ukraine. He admits that evacuating animals is harder than evacuating people.
It doesn't take much brains to get them out. But then what? Both people and animals. That's the problem. If people can leave, go to their relatives, or just stay in a shelter or somewhere temporarily, it's much more complicated with animals. All the shelters are already overcrowded, and there are no fewer dogs and cats in the frontline areas.
Most of the animals rescued on this trip are able to be placed in Smila, Cherkasy region. They already have spots prepared for them in a shelter that itself was evacuated from Mirnahad almost a year ago.
Today, we're settling them into warm cages and feeding them. We give them water to drink. Tomorrow morning, we'll load our evacuation bus and take them to Smila, to the shelter.
Now, all the evacuated animals are safe. They will be cared for and new owners will be found for them. And the volunteers are already planning their next trips to frontline settlements. Dmytro Hlushko from Dnipropetrovsk read it, especially for Freedom TV channel.
Kyiv is initiating a ban on entry to the European Union for citizens of the Russian Federation who participated in the war against Ukraine. This was stated by Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. He emphasized that Estonia has already made such a decision, and now it's time to extend it to the entire EU.
First of all, this is about the long-term national security of European states and protecting their citizens from Russian criminals. Secondly, it will set the right price for the wrong choice. Every single Russian citizen who formally signs a military contract to invade Ukraine will fully understand that they are also signing a lifetime ban on entering any part of Europe. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Russia's recruiting people with criminal backgrounds to carry out sabotage. This was reported by the Latvian State Security Service. The agency noted that former prisoners and drug addicts are gathering information and organizing sabotage for money. But there are also those who voluntarily provide information. The main targets of the Russian special services are military facilities and critical infrastructure.
Last year, several incidents occurred on our country's territory that we are currently investigating, and in which we do not rule out a connection to assignments given by Russian special services. They plan to set fire to trucks with Ukrainian license plates on the grounds of a critical infrastructure facility. They compiled a list of potential sabotage targets: memorials, power supply facilities, warehouses with flammable goods, and military sites. Normans Mezviets, head of the Latvian State Security Service.
The world has entered an era of destructive politics. This is stated in the annual report of the Munich Security Conference. The document was published today, and I should also note that the meeting itself will take place this year from February 13th to 15th.
The world has entered a period of destructive politics. Instead of careful reforms and course corrections, today there is a drive for large-scale destruction. At the forefront of those promising to free their peoples from the constraints of the existing order and restore strong and prosperous nations is the current U.S. administration. As a result, the international order created by the United States after 1945 is now collapsing. From the annual report of the Munich Security Conference,